Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Motivation edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll try to answer the question of what drives us to act by exploring 5 major theories of motivation. But first, we'll define what we mean by motivation and discuss why this is important for psychologists to understand. You can think of motivation as any internal process that affects what we do and how strongly we want to do it. This is important to consider because our motives cause our behavior a lot of the time, whether it's eating, being with friends, or even working. So motivation is more than just striving to succeed, but it involves anything that would make us want to move toward a goal. Now, this goal could be something biological, like hunger, thirst, warmth, sleep, sex. Or it could be something non-biological, like a need for affiliation, achievement, autonomy, or nurturance. Over the years, we've seen 5 major theories of motivation try and explain why we do the things that we do. The instinct theory says that we're born to behave in a certain way when we're exposed to a certain stimulus, just like a reflex reaction. So, for example, if our stomach growls, or we see a chocolate cake sitting on the counter, these stimuli would trigger behaviors that would satisfy hunger, like finding food and eating. But this idea is overly simplistic and circular. We're hungry because we're eating, and we're eating because we're hungry. That being said, twin studies have found that some personality traits are at least partially genetic, and these traits could influence what drives us. For example, our tendency to be shy or outgoing is at least partially inherited, and whichever way we are, it will dictate what we want to do, whether it's going out dancing or staying in to read a book. Today, evolutionary psychologists have modified the instinct theory to say that we're motivated to do behaviors that increase our survival. So if having friends increased the survival of our ancestors, then the trait of sociability would have been passed down in the population, leaving most of us today with a need to have friends. According to arousal theory, we're motivated to maintain a certain level of physiological arousal, and this level might be different for different people. But when we stray from our ideal level, we do behaviors to get it back to that ideal level, and this is what motivates our behavior. So maybe if we're really hungry, this increases our arousal and motivates us to decrease it back to normal levels by eating. But if we've been riding on a cross-country bus, squished in a little seat for 8 hours, maybe when you finally get off, you'd feel like your arousal was decreased. And this would motivate you to increase it back to normal levels by walking around and stretching. According to the drive reduction theory, disruptions to our physiological state of balance drives us to do what we do, and you can think of the organism as being pushed to act. This means that if we're thirsty, we have a drive, and our goal is to decrease it by drinking. The problem, however, is that sometimes we act in ways that increase our drive. We keep running for another 15 minutes even though we're hot, sweaty, and thirsty. Or we say no to that cheesecake even though we're still hungry because we're trying to make better eating choices. The incentive theory proposes that organisms are instead pulled to action by something that they desire, like grades or food or praise, and this is what motivates behavior. But it isn't just the value that the individual places on the incentive itself, like the grades or food or praise, but how much they expect that their behavior will lead to those incentives too. This theory can explain why sometimes we might say yes to the cheesecake after supper, even though we couldn't eat another bite. It just tastes too good to say no. The drive reduction theory couldn't explain why sometimes we do this. Finally, we have Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow said that we're motivated to fulfill the needs at the bottom of the hierarchy first, before we move on to the need above it. So our first priority would be food and water, but once that was satisfied, we would move on to safety needs, or feeling secure and stable. After these 2 biological needs are satisfied, the individual would move on to satisfying their need for love and belongingness, or feeling like an accepted part of a group. After that's satisfied, the person would move on to esteem needs, or working on self-worth and reaching a sense of accomplishment at school, work, and home. Finally, after all those needs are met, the person would strive for self-actualization, or they'd feel the need to realize their own inner potential and be the best that they can be. Well, we just discussed what motivation is and why it's important to understand. Then we explored 5 theories of motivation that have been put forth over the years to try and explain why we do the things that we do. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?